Five soldiers have lost their lives in the line of duty in yet another terror attack in Kathua in Jammu. There has been a consistent surge in terror attacks through the month of June. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo story. We're looking today at the new eruption of violence in Jammu and Kashmir. How do we explain the lives that are being lost? Every few days, we get terrible headlines of young lives that are lost at the front line. At first, it seemed as if there was somewhat of a lull in the violence, in militant attacks, in terror activities. But there has been a distinct spike in violence. Pakistan has clearly turned on the terror tap again. In the latest attack, you can see an army truck that was ambushed. Terrorists fired, surrounded this particular vehicle, and we have seen 5 soldiers lose their lives. We have also seen several others be injured. Why has Jammu and Kashmir erupted again? Is the aim to actually derail any chance of holding an assembly election in Jammu and Kashmir? Remember, the Kathua attack has taken place hours after terrorists were gunned down in an operation in South Kashmir. And a dramatic hideout of terrorists was exposed in Kulgam, where you could actually see what was hiding behind the bunker or underneath the bunker. How do we understand this at a time when the government has given a statement that these attacks will not go unavenged? Obviously, operational details of counter responses cannot be discussed on programs such as these. But after what happened in the aftermath of the Uri terror attack, what happened in the aftermath of Pulwama, which was, of course, Balakot, as Pakistan turns on the terror tap again, what are India's options? How do we understand this moment? And why aren't more people paying attention to it? Let's introduce our guests on the program today. Remember, this attack has taken place and there may be no connection between these two facts. While the Prime Minister is in Moscow, his hug with Vladimir Putin also making global headlines. General Neeraj Bali is with us, who's of course a military veteran, as well as the author of the book, The Winning Culture. We're also joined by General Vinod Bhatia, who's of course a military veteran, also the former Director General of Military Operations. Tavleen Singh, author and journalist, who has spent a large part of her journalistic life actually reporting on and from Jammu and Kashmir, is with us. And also joining us is Yashovardhan Azad, who has, of course, he's a senior IPS officer, but he's also served as special director in the Intelligence Bureau. Thank you very much, all of you. Let me actually start with you, General Bhatia. Of course, any loss of life is terrible. Any sort of casualties, fatalities of the kind we've seen in this attack, where 5 lives have been lost. Some of the pictures are actually too gruesome, too horrible to show. We have taken a considered call not to show them. But the attack has been lethal. The vehicle has been surrounded from all sides, and it's not the first attack. Since the day of the swearing in of the Modi government, when the attack started in Riyasi, we have seen consistent attacks through June. What is going on according to you? What explains this, General Bhatia?
Thank you, Barkha. I think it's a very important topic right now. Firstly, let me start by paying homage to the 5 soldiers who made the supreme sacrifice. Itself, it pains. What it indicates is that Pakistan continues to calibrate the violence levels in Jammu and Kashmir, despite the cost and the consequences which we raised for them over the last 6 to 7 years. And that is something which is very evident. They have the network which is intact. It may be weakened, but the network is intact. And the violence levels shifted from north of Pir Panjal to south of Pir Panjal. What really has happened is that we have had some thinning out which has happened in the south of Pir Panjal. The troops have moved out from there. And the counter-terrorism grid in south of Pir Panjal has been diluted a little. And terrorism like water, wherever they get an opportunity, wherever they find a certain weakness in terms of deployment, Pakistan will calibrate that, and they always do that, and that's what they're trying to indicate. At the geopolitical level, what they're trying to tell is, look, Kashmir is still central to us. It's still the jugular vein, and we will continue to do what we are doing despite what happened after Uri. But having said that, let me divert it a little. I've been in Kashmir for the last 2 weeks plus, and I speak from Srinagar right now. I have been all over in my own personal capacity, in my personal car with my wife, and what I see is very heartening. I see the peace dividend. I see no terrorism out there. I see tourism flourishing. eateries full, restaurants full, hotels full, cabs not available, no parking spaces anywhere of tourism. So I think that's a very heartening to see all this. And the visibility of the footprints of the security forces are much less than I've ever seen in the last 30 odd years. I've been with it since 1990, 35 years now. And having Kashmir and south of Punjab was the div commander there. So that is how it shifted. The center of gravity for the terrorism shifted from the north of Punjab to the south of Punjab, whether it's Riyasi, whether it's right now in Kathua, earlier to the Poonch Rajouri sector. So that is where I think we have to re-strengthen the trade. We cannot right now. The counterterrorism had to be good because the people have to start feeling the peace dividend after 2019. Go to the violence levels. The violence levels have been, let me say, subcritical. Despite what the terrorism done, every time there's a terrorist attack, they want visibility. It doesn't matter to them where it happens, how it happens, what is the end result of it, how many terrorists get killed. It is not material. But how many soldiers and how many civilians are the victims of terrorism? That is more important. So
But
that is where I
curious, the curious question is, why now? And I agree with you. During the elections, I traveled to Kashmir, among other places, and not just did the turnout in Jammu and Kashmir, in particular the Kashmir Valley, beat most metropolitan cities in India. I met with former stone pelters, former separatists, even parents of militant sons who have been killed by security forces who voted. So, Tavleen, what do we make of what's happening? We see a big statement today from the government. The loss of life will be avenged. The sacrifice will not go in vain. What's happening? The month of June has been very peculiar. Given the relative lull, the turning on of the terror tap by Pakistan again, could it be to derail the assembly election? What's actually going on here, Tavleen Singh?
Okay, I agree with General Bhatia that when you go to the valley, it seems calmer than ever before. In Srinagar, downtown Srinagar, you can go in the evenings when you could never dream of doing such a thing. But I have to say that politically, we have become complacent. We must remember this is our problem. If we are being attacked, it is because we have somehow lost the plot. Pakistan, for the past year and a half before they put Imran in jail and all that, has been in a very turbulent state. It's been, the generals in Pakistan have been more occupied with politics and with controlling their own political situation. Now they've got it under control. They're doing what they're always going to do. And it is for us to not have been so complacent, because no state in the whole of India can survive endlessly without a political process. And I think that they delayed it too long. I actually supported the removal of Article 370 because I felt it had become a wall. But after that, they did nothing. I mean, you just put in the jackboot, lock people up, and it doesn't work. Statehood should be restored. A proper political process must be started, and we should strengthen our political defenses as much as our security defenses.
Tavleen, while I actually agree with you in principle, it's not as if tomorrow, if assembly elections were being held or the political process had been revived earlier, these terror attacks would not be happening. Pakistan would still be doing what it's always been doing now for decades.
Yeah, we can't stop that. What we have to do is strengthen our defenses. It is for us. The failure is on the Indian side. I'm sorry to say this, both in terms of security and in terms of politics. Do you know, a politician who I don't wish to name once said to me that when there is democracy and freedom and a good sense of feeling in Kashmir, then the Kashmiris are not worried in the least bit about Pakistan. But these guys are obviously getting some support now from those people in Pakistan, in Kashmir, who believe that a political process has been shelved almost indefinitely. And, there are people like that, and we've got to actually strengthen our political process as well as the security. Pakistan's going to carry on.
General Neeraj Bali, do you agree? Do we join the dots between 370, where Pakistan has pushed itself into a corner saying we will not talk to India till the abrogation of 370 is reversed? It doesn't matter who's coming to power. That's not happening. I mean, I never make categorical statements on my show, but I don't see the 370 abrogation ever being reversed. So Pakistan has that position. Pakistan has the terror taps back on again. There's an assembly election that's scheduled to be to take place. These are attempts to derail that clearly. But do you agree with Tavleen that there have been failings on our part? Terrorism will continue, but the gains that should have accrued from 370 haven't fully accrued. Yes, the markets are open. Yes, people are voting. Yes, the hotels are full. But politically, there could and should have been other gains. General Bali.
While I agree with many of the excellent points Tavleen has just made, uh, particularly the fact that we may not have gone far enough after abrogating 370. In fact, we may not have taken even baby steps in the political direction. But I somehow believe that these attacks are not linked with any of that. The reason I say this is because this time the trouble is not internal. It doesn't appear like there's an upsurge from within. So a comparison with stone pelters or the fomenting of the trouble that used to take place every now and then doesn't look like the reason why this is happening. To me, it appears, as General Lata Hasnan has said elsewhere, this is an effort by the Pakistanis to again stamp their relevance, to remind all of us and remind the world that they are still there, they have a stake here, and all the talk about the control that we have over Kashmir after the abrogation of Article 370 is perhaps not accurate. So this is, I think, an effort on Pakistan's part, not so much any trouble from within. Will a political process help negate that part also further? Yes, perhaps it would. The second thing that I would want to say this is that this is, of course, part of the old cliche of keeping the pot boiling on part of Pakistan. But there is something else that struck me over the last few days. When we think of how the Pakistanis think, we tend to use the template of our rationality to imagine how they must be thinking about all of this. We made that mistake in Kargil in the beginning. We thought they would do something else. They ended up doing something entirely different. Now let's look at it this way. As Jan Bhatia mentioned, perhaps the CT grid in this area, in the south of Kashmir, has been diluted. For reasons we all know, the troops have moved to Ladakh. Who benefits from these attacks? What do they expect the Indian polity to do?
General Bali, I think we seem to have lost you. Yeah, okay.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Please, please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, so if we join the dots from the Pakistani point of view, what are they expecting us to do? Not sit hand on hand, not while this government is around. We will probably strengthen the CT grid. And where are we going to get those troops from? We can discuss this later in the program. But one of the obvious things they might be hoping is we would be diluting troops from up north. Now, I'm not one for conspiracy.
So are you alluding?
But I'm talking about.
No, hang on. You're alluding effectively to a China-Pakistan nexus. Indian military has been wargaming forever for a two-front conflict. In effect, there is a two-front conflict, right? You have a militarized region in eastern Ladakh now, and you have what you have at the LOC in the international border. Are you suggesting that there is a kind of cohesive coordination between China and Pakistan?
I have zero evidence to say that, but I have a very strong hunch that this could well be, we may be getting blindsided here, because this could be a collusive strategy between the two countries. Who benefits from pulling out of troops from Ladakh? There is only one country. So I think we need to look a little out of the box here and not keep imposing our rationality on Pakistani minds and keep thinking it's all to do with only 370 or, it's a little trouble that will take place and go away. I think that is the long-term strategic direction we need to look at.
Let me briefly, before I come to Yashovardhan Azad, who I'm sure we'll have things to say on intelligence gathering, logistics. Why are these trucks so vulnerable that they're able to be shot at and lead to these level of fatalities? Tavleen, to the point that General Bali and General Bhatia have both made, that what we're actually seeing is external terror, not an upsurge from within. In fact, many of these attacks are taking place in Jammu, where there isn't even historic roots of separatism. Therefore, the point you make about 370, while separately valid, may not actually apply to this situation. What would you say, Tavleen?
I don't believe that there is the kind of support for for secessionism as there was, but there is still support. If there wasn't support on the ground, these guys would be turned in straight away. You know, I've covered Punjab as well, and as soon as the support from the villagers, ordinary villagers, stopped to the Khalistanis, terrorism ended. Now, in Kashmir, there are very deep-rooted ideas of secessionism, as you know as well as I do. I mean, I can't even remember a time when they didn't exist. So, you know, basically, what we've got to do is not allow any chinks in our own armor, both politically and, and security-wise. And, I mean, as a soldier's daughter, I really believe that if somebody kills you, it's your fault. I'm sorry, but you've done something stupid. You haven't been able to.
Well, how is it your fault if your vehicle gets surrounded by all sides and you're shot at? How is it your fault?
What was that vehicle doing so unprotected? Why was it there without intelligence? It's a total failure of intelligence, a shameful failure of intelligence.
Let me bring in Yashovardhan Azad at this point. Do you agree that it's a shameful failure of intelligence, as Tavleen calls it?
Well, let me start by saying that irrespective of the regimes, irrespective of any setup in J&K, whether it was a state, whether it was a UT, whether it was a Congress, whether it was a BJP, the attacks have continued sporadically throughout. After we had the slide in militancy, and we were looking forward after Musharraf's, piece at the, at the LOC of a period ahead, and we always maintained that there is a lull in violence. The question is, I totally agree with MS Tavleen when she says that there is local support to militancy. There is also another thing. When we are all the time focusing on Pakistan, we must also realize that many of these militants who have been caught are local militants. Number three, as per your intelligence reports and interrogations, it is also clear that they are highly sophisticated in terms of their communications, right? Whether they are communicating on very specialized VoIP protocols, or they are communicating on these special WhatsApp channels. It is difficult for the intelligence agents to get these guys. The other thing is that many of the new timers have also joined in. And joining of these new timers has created a huge problem. And therefore, the heavy dependence on technology that we are keeping all the time doing this electronic eavesdropping, there is perhaps time to go back to the drawing table and also look at the human part of it, which we were getting in fairly good measure some time back. And I'm sure in Jammu, we'll be able to get it back. On the question of intelligence, let us also say that Army has done a brilliant job in Kulgam, where they've neutralized in 2 or 3 encounters about 8 of them. So that also proves that the intelligence grid, as General Bali also said, is very sound and intact in a particular area. And in an area like Jammu, where there is thinned out, the security grid is definitely getting a little weaker. Now, the next point which I want to say, I totally agree that the political process cannot be negated. Irrespective of the violence, whether it's happening in a regime or not, the government cannot fail in initiating the process dialogue. And I also believe it has been very, very late. Third point, the question is, yes, the tourism festival will go on. Good money when it comes, everyone likes it. I was in Pahalgam and it was really, very enjoyable. And I went to that Amarnath Yatra at the beginning also. But when it comes to a Bihari laborer or anyone outside trying to make an entry, he's killed. So the signals are quite clear. The support for the militancy is there in certain quarters. And therefore, the best way is to do what? One is political process as soon as possible. I don't know what we have gained by making as UTs, though I fully support the abolishing of the Article 370. The other thing which I firmly believe in, always pointing things at Pakistan, it doesn't help us. I don't even think that, Pakistan is all the time pushing. Many things are automatic and happening on their own only. In Poonch, for example, there was a report that there was a drone. And with the help of drones, we are having these drugs and arms being supplied from various quarters. So what I say is security grid should be stronger. The political process should be initiated, and along with that, the intelligence has to be strengthened.
On Tavleen's point, before I go to Generals Bhatia and Bali, do you think that there are questions to be asked as to why a vehicle should be exposed in this manner? See, we had this debate after Pulwama about how to keep the movement of soldiers safer. Would you call this, even if it's a local intelligence failure, because as you said, the army by contrast has done a brilliant job in South Kashmir, 6 terrorists eliminated there, bunkers that actually reveal, we have that footage, bunkers revealing what's actually hidden inside these hideouts. Do you believe, Mr. Azad, very briefly, before I go to General Bhatia, that there has been a local intelligence failure here?
No, many a time, you see, army is doing a difficult job. When you are doing patrolling, if patrolling duty means itself that it cannot have backups. It's like a road opening party. So the patrolling party, I admire the bravery of these people, the way they are going into the field and still operating in a tough area. Maybe a new route of Samba Kathua has opened. Who knows? Because this was a route which was alive earlier. It's right next to the border. So there is easy, ingress and egress too. So no, I don't think that is an intelligence failure per se. Intelligence may be weak in that particular area because a lot has been thinned out already. But on the other hand, I would say that there's still fired back. There were grenades on both sides. It was very, very difficult to prevent such a casualty.
Briefly, just to push back, Tavleen, on your point that if a soldier, as a soldier's daughter, you believe that a soldier's job is actually to survive any attack. That's not possible at the front line or in a insurgency area, right? By the virtue of being out there at the last point of defense, you're exposed. You are walking in every day to that job, taking a risk with your life. And some might say, Tavleen, it's very easy for you to say intelligence failure. What is the intelligence input that anybody's going to give you? You can die any day in these postings.
Yeah, of course that's true. But soldiers join the army knowing that, right? They already know that there will always be a risk, as there will be in war. But with me, I have been very disappointed, not just this time, but for a very long time, on the fact that we cannot deal with this 2-bit little Islamic republic next door that is, economically a basket case, that has become a kind of Chinese outpost. Why are we not able? We're India, for goodness sake. It shames me as an Indian that we aren't more able to deal with these guys. Why is Hafiz Saeed, for instance, not dead yet, as far as I'm concerned? I'm being very frank with you. I don't believe in soft peddling terrorists. If you have a gun in your hand and you see a terrorist, kill him, right? So if we are able to do that, if we can either, we have to convince ourselves that we are strong enough to deal with this. And I really believe that there's been complacency after the removal of Article 370 and too much rah-rah, Baroi tourism's coming, etc. Do you know how serious the unemployment problem is among young people in Kashmir? Do you know how little investment has actually gone in there to create jobs? The one problem you hear everywhere in Kashmir is there are no jobs. I haven't been able to take a taxi there without somebody saying, "Ki ji, hamare liye Delhi mein kuch dhoond ke dao, hamara beta hai, graduate hai." So we're not dealing with. We've just sat on our haunches after the removal of Article 370.
Okay, let's bring in General Bhatia and General Bali. General Bhatia, easier said than done? Or do you think that there's merit in the argument made by Tavleen that, like, by now, India, this great power, the third largest economy in the world, and so on, should have been able to contain Pakistan. That said, there have been 4 wars. I count Kargil as one of them, and massive loss to human life. Through the month of June, we have lost so many young lives. If this is easier said than done, I don't know what the option is. If war is not an option, there's China on the other front, as General Bali pointed out. There is a nexus between Pakistan and China. Pakistan is almost like a vassal state of China. What are the realistic options?
So there are many realistic options, and let me say that we're not doing badly. There will be a bad day in office. It will always happen. We are at it day in and day out. Please respect the soldier. It is his life, and he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to voluntarily sacrifice his life for the country. When required, he will do it. To say that when he knows the risk, every job has a risk, and a soldier's job has a risk. And to say that he's complacent, I don't agree at all. You just go out and see morning, evening, night. They are at it. He gets about 3 to 4 hours.
No, I don't think Tavleen meant the soldiers are complacent. Tavleen, do you want to speak for yourself, actually? Tavleen, can we unmute Tavleen? Can we unmute Tavleen?
Please.
Tavleen, I think you're, there, yeah.
I'm not talking about the soldiers being complacent. I come from a military background myself. My father was in the army. I have the greatest respect for the army. But I think that the politicians have become complacent. They've dropped the ball. They haven't actually taken the steps needed to bring a full level of peace in Kashmir.
Yeah, as we speak, General Bhatia, we are seeing commanders paying homage to the lives lost. 5 young lives lost, several others injured. These are very, very moving pictures. We just saw the gallantry awards being given, and I think it broke everybody's heart to see several of the young women, young wives, families left to pick up the pieces of these broken lives. So I completely agree with you that no soldier wants to trivialize what's happening. No young person in their 20s, because that's their age, in their 20s actually wants to go and sacrifice their life for nothing. But my question is, what should be the response? We have drawn some new red lines. We have drawn a Balakot red line. The abrogation of 370 is also a kind of red line, that enough of the old discourse, we're going to do things differently. But now we are faced with these challenges. Is something structurally changing, or is this a bad phase? I think that's the question. Because you see, Pakistan has also been mysteriously and relatively, quiet. Relatively quiet. Maybe it was too consumed by its own existential problems. We don't know. But there's also China, and we can't forget China.
Yes, there are 2 things to it. One is the China-Pakistan, I won't call it nexus, I won't call it collusive threat, it's a collaborative threat. There are differences between collusivity and collaborative. Yeah. I think it's a collaborative, and I've got to live with it, and we can live with it. We are doing reasonably well on both the counts, reasonably well, right? And we can talk of statistics. In 2000, we would lose about 2,000 plus in the year 2000, 2001, 2003. We lost about 2,000 plus soldiers in Jammu and Kashmir. Right. Today, we are down to, this year, down to, I think, a single figure 9. We should not even lose 1. But there are 2 things to it. One is the military, one is the political thing. The military can bring the violence levels down to give us stage to the politicians to step in and ensure peace. What we need in Kashmir today is education, which is happening now. The schools are open, the strikes are down, and we got 46 AGPS, the Army Goodwill Public Schools. The second thing we need, as has been said, is we need employment for the people, right? Economic development, and we need empathy for the people also. So if we don't do that at the political level, I think all the sacrifices will be lost. And that is where I think the politicians have to step in, and the state assembly elections have to go on. We'll have to look at we'll have to live with Pakistan. Pakistan will continue to calibrate the violence levels, definitely. Even though Pakistan today is militarily weak, it is economically weak, it is administratively weak, it's politically weak, and diplomatically weak, right? And that makes it more, it is more important now that we don't give Pakistan a chance, because how does Pakistan military become strong? By an anti-India. But Pakistan's policy, India policy, driven the Pakistani army. And the Pakistani army is nothing better to have an India-Pakistan sort of a thing going on into the public, because that's the relevance of the Pakistani army. So I do feel that it's very important for us to be to give the political space for the assembly elections, and let the people decide for themselves what do they want. I think you covered the elections very, very well. And the elections have given us thrown up a result. Whatever is the results, the people's mandate. So state elections should be held, and it is the political space which needs to be occupied. Now the military has done its job to a great extent. And we will, honestly, if we think that there will be zero violence, it's not going to happen. Pakistan still
I agree with yeah, I agree with that, General Bali, because I don't think any of us who've been associated with Jammu and Kashmir now, for so many years can remember a phase when there wasn't violence. But equally, let's acknowledge that this is less violence than we have ever seen, at least in the last 30 years. Even with the horrible loss of lives in the month of June, even with that, and every life counts. When you look at the images of the young soldiers who have lost their lives yesterday, it breaks your heart. But I want to push back a little bit on this idea of local support. You can apply that argument in the Kashmir Valley. How can we apply it in the Pir Panjal? The politics are totally different, right? Yes, at the barrel of a gun, there might be villagers who are giving shelter to terrorists, but there are also village defense committees made up of civilians that have for years fought these same terrorists. So something else is going on here. Why is Jammu now the epicenter, mostly, of the new terror attacks?
So, as you're aware, I commanded an anti-terrorist battalion, a Russian Rifle battalion, back in late 90s when things were really hot, and later on served with General Patakka when you would visit the valley many, many times. There are two elements of local support in the valley. One is a support which comes out somewhat voluntarily, what Tavleen referred to. There is always a ripple of support just below the surface, which has been there for a long time, and nobody should deny that. There is some support which happens because of khawf, the khawf that is created by the militants, and there's again no denying that. I mean, if I was approached by a militant and asked for food, I'd probably do the same thing. Mm-hmm. But the elements we need to really focus on, both in the valley as well as now in south of Pir Panjal, where it is really happening, is the support which is done by people who are called OGWs, the overground workers. There is no terrorist tanzim which can survive on its own, navigate its way through a different place, a different country, without local support of that nature. And as you alluded to, south of Pir Panjal, there is no widespread support for secession, or, that simply doesn't exist. It is exactly that support that we need to target and root out. As a matter of fact, there are many sources who have reported that during this Kathua attack, there were local sources who carried out the reconnaissance with the terrorists, who were even present during the attack, who provided food. Now, this is that element that we have not targeted very well. I think one thing I would say about the response is, instead of just lashing out in anger and trying to do something else, we should ferret out these sources, and we should take them to the cleaners. As the DG of Police of J&K has, I think, said that they're going to apply an Enemy Agents Act, in which there's only life imprisonment or death sentence, which are the only two outcomes. So I think that is what we should target as in terms of local support. There is no widespread local support south of Pir Panjal, certainly not in the areas of Kathua and where these things are happening.
But just briefly before I go to Yasho, and then we can take last comments on China, or what General Bhatia calls the collaborative threat. The point is that this is also a fait accompli. After what's happened in Kargil, and we're approaching the 25th anniversary, you're not going to pull back from Ladakh, and you're not going to be able to not fortify the LOC. So, these two regions being simultaneously militarized is something we're going to have to live with.
You have three options on how to strengthen the CT grid south of Pir Panjal. All three options are going to look bad. So you'll have to pick the less worse option. Thinning out troops from Ladakh is absolutely not something we should contemplate, not only because it is militarily harmful, it is also because then we're just playing straight into the hands of the people who are fomenting the trouble. The only other options that exist are that if there are pockets in the valley which we feel are completely under control, and remember, the line of control is defended far better in valley. It is far less porous now. The in-grid is far better. The support from the nomadic tribes of Bakrwals and Gujars is far better today, which prevents infiltration to that degree. We may want to take away some troops from the valley. And really, it breaks my heart to suggest the next option. We might have to get some troops from the peace stations. That's not really a great option for the army ever, but we have done this before. And that is some of the steps we might have to take immediately.
Yashovardhan, do come in. I'm starting to take last comments. What needs to be the learning from what's happened? Right? Movement of soldiers, the movement of troops is often the time that they are most vulnerable. We have seen this from Pulwama till now. And no amount of generic intelligence warnings can actually insulate a soldier from that kind of attack if it comes.
Yes, you see, technically, if you see the road opening parties and the patrolling parties when they go, obviously they go in the blind. They have a general intelligence, but specific intelligence is only when there is a large amount of troop movement. And that's exactly where the army knows how to do its operations. I mean, I would say it's a great act of bravery for the road opening parties and the patrolling parties. And why they are necessary is because, there's a thing called domination of the area, whether it's the night domination, which Gill did in Punjab, or is the domination of the terrorists should know that any time the troops move out, they are not in fear of any kind of, insurgency or terrorism. That is number one. Number two, in Jammu particular area, there are obviously cells which have been activated. And these are cells of, lying dead for a very long time. In the first decade of 21st century, when you saw all over India, various kind of, terrorist depredations, where were they coming from? They were coming from these very, very small cells. There was no support for terrorism in the entire country. That's exactly what is happening in Jammu. So what is needed today is a better intelligence network. These encryptions, which are unbreakable, you need a system to get through to them. You have to stress more on human. And as far as the future goes, I would like to say, number one is hold the elections as soon as possible, because political sagacity is always better than a mere security grid. Number two, hold talks with anyone you feel like, whether it's on dal, sabzi, carrot, cricket, whatever, so that you give that impression that we are ready for talks also. We are ready to give a very firm security grid. And last comment of mine is, no matter what you do, Barkha, Jammu and Kashmir will remain in ferment for the next 30, 40 years till the terrorist really thinks that there are better options ahead. Otherwise, and it's another day in office, you have to treat it. Stop condemning Pakistan on TV and papers and everywhere. Look at yourself and look at it as you have to take some losses in this kind of a setup.
Tavleen, last thoughts. Nothing's going away very soon, and I think I would agree with that I don't think Pakistan's role in this is. And I take Yash's point. And what's the point of going on commenting on Pakistan? We know it. I mean, we know that this is even if they're local groups, they're Pakistan backed, Pakistan funded. Your last thoughts.
One, you would have realized, as somebody who's been to Pakistan, that every Pakistani child has been brought up to believe that Kashmir will one day be part of Pakistan. That's not going to change, no matter what we do. That's what I'm saying. Just forget all that and let's strengthen, for a start, the political framework, the political infrastructure in Kashmir. We haven't done that, and we have to do it urgently. Restore statehood, give them the dignity of not being treated like some sort of like cattle, like vassals or something. Give them that dignity, and at the same time, we have to examine where it is that there are intelligence gaps, where it is that there are holes in the security framework, because Pakistan is never going to accept that Kashmir is not going to come to them.
Right. But conversely, General Bhatia, India is never going to accept that Kashmir is anything but an integral part of the Indian Union. Now, my question to you is, or an integral part of India, my question to you is, if you had to look at three things to be done immediately, General Bali said you may have to consider moving troops, fortifying from peace stations, or you say, okay, the situation in the valley has improved, let's push out more men to the borders? What would you do? What would you say?
Rewind the Agniveer.
Sorry?
Agnipath. Rewind the Agnipath.
Rewind the Agnipath. Okay. Okay.
No, we should not look at the near term or the immediate term. We should look at the mid to long term. That is where the problem is going to start.
Mm-hmm.
We need, it's difficult to sustain. It's very easy to say, pull down on the piece. How long? A man has to train, retrain. You can't constantly give him into a zone of high risk. He has to go back to train, come back a better soldier. So that is internally, I think the army will find a way. Let's not discuss it out here. I'm sure the army is at it. So I'm very confident the army is at it. They're much better, more professionals than any one of us out here. But we've got to look at two things: the internal and the external. Internal is Jammu and Kashmir, the people, and external is Pakistan. And we'll have to find the way, in a way to balance it out, that we minimize the Pakistan interference and we maximize the people's peace dividend. The peace dividend, if my child is going to the school with a tie on and I've got a roof over my head, I will speak only for the militants and do nothing more than that. Right? Because
can I ask you though, because you brought in a much talked about element into the conversation, and I want others to respond to it. You have said rewind Agniveers, it won't work. There is a lot of debate happening right now, and in fact, the mother of Captain Anshuman, we saw the mother and wife of Captain Anshuman receive the Kirti Chakra. She just gave a statement saying that she doesn't believe that there should be two kinds of soldiers within the same army unit. Can you elaborate on why you think Agniveer, Agnipath is the program, Agniveer is the soldier, is hurting the internal security capacity, the combat effectiveness, General Bhatia? And I like reactions to it as well. General Bhatia?
There are two things. One is the shortage of manpower, because you can talk technology, right? But technology is so good. We've seen Israel, what happens out.
Mm-hmm.
It is, in the end, it is a soldier that matters. Technology is only an aid. It is not a substitute. It's not a force substitutor. It's only an aid. So that is something which I was seeing. Now, firstly, for 3 years we had no recruitment. So there are shortages of manpower, especially in the contact units. Secondly, then you get Agniveers and you have transformation, and you got China's looking at the other side. So we are trying to do too many things at the same time without realizing the consequence of the whole thing. And that is where today a man who could do about 12-hour duty to 13-hour duty, get some respite, today he's doing 15 to 16 hours. It's not sustainable. Like General Bali is very right. He says, where do you get it from? Get it from the peace station. Easier said than done. How do you get from the peace station? You already got deployment along the LAC, which was not there earlier. So my point is very simple. My point is, do not try to change things which are already, which is our strength. Our strength is a soldier. Indian soldier costs the minimum, delivers the maximum. We have to understand that. And any HR policy undergraduate who's doing MBA will tell you that any policy has to contribute to organizational effectiveness and a congruence between the aspirations of the workforce. Today, it is neither being, the organization being degraded and the Agniveer is not happy. So I see no reason. But tomorrow, these chefs are not going to, they will not give their full. Today in Kashmir itself, they will, why should they risk it for 4 years? Tell me. It's very easy to say this 15 to 16 hours, but why should Agniveer do it?
Yeah. Just for context, for our audience, an Agniveer enters the army at a salary of 30,000 rupees per month. It goes up to 40,000 rupees after 4 years. Then he gets a lump sum amount of about 11 lakhs. But if he dies in the line of duty, his family gets no lifelong pension. His children don't get educated by the state. They get a one-time figure. We've seen this controversy with an Agniveer Ajay Kumar in Punjab. Yashovardhan Azad, I'm glad General Bhatia brought this in, because he's joined the dots between this and fighting capacity. And this is an internal issue. This is not, Pakistan has not asked us to change our military recruitment policy. Mr. Azad?
Well, while my heart says definitely that this Agniveer concept is not good, but my mind says that there is no other option. Rationally, all over the world, this principle is now being followed. And we just don't have the budget to support this huge, army salaries. So sooner or later, we have to go into it. In fact, even in police and the CAPF, many of the jobs need to be outsourced. So it's a bad case, but I don't see any other option available.
Yes, but you can't place different values on, I think, Tavleen, on two men dying in the line of duty in the same place, one being treated differently because he's an Agniveer and the other being treated differently because he's a regular soldier.
Okay, I'm not a military expert, but I haven't met a military man who has said Agniveer is a good idea. So this is political interference in the army, and it ends badly, right from the time of the 62 war with China. It was political interference then that caused trouble in the army, and this is a political interference. Secondly, I mean, what about, we know there's a big pension bill, but why don't we cut down on how much we spend on our politicians? Why are they living like little princes in Delhi? You know, let's cut elsewhere. You know, we can cut the cost of governance elsewhere.
General Bhatia, you wanted to come in? Yeah, General Bhatia.
30 seconds. I think we always talk of costs and budgets and pensions. When you go through the document of the Agniveer scheme, it doesn't talk of pensions at all. That is one. Anyway, I think we got to realize between the cost of money which the government sees and the value of money which national security should factor in. There are different cost of money and value of money. So I think we'll be blind if we just look at the cost of money and not the value of money. Without security, you cannot have long-term peace, stability, and economic development.
I have to disagree with Mr. Azad here, my good friend Yasho, because I rarely disclose my own opinion on a program I'm moderating, but I think Agniveer is a terrible idea. General Bali, sorry, with that preface, I'm giving you the last word.
All right. So every other point about Agniveer has been made, ad infinitum, for the budget and so on. It doesn't improve technology. It doesn't bring youth to us. It will unleash a lot of people into the streets 4 years down the line, which the society will have to take care of, and so on and so forth. In fact, I heard an interview of I'm from Bihar Regiment. I heard an interview of a Bihari boy who was joining as Agniveer and said, they asked him, "Agar 4 saal ke baad nahi raho to kya karoge?" He said, "Aur to kya karenge, lekin police ke haath to nahi chadenge." So, that's the mindset. There is another element of culture which also been spoken about. Look, the key difference between the way we are in the army and the rest of the world outside is all our equations are relational. We are related to each other. We are not transactional like the corporate sector, where also have served now for 8 years. When you induct people who know that they have to just compete with each other and somehow make it past the line after 4 years, in the formative years, you are giving rise to a transactional culture. People just living for themselves and somehow surviving at the end of 4 years to get into the army. I think this is another element that should have been looked at. So, yes, I'm not a cynic. Initially, I said, let's give it a shot. But I wish they had done a little petri dish experiment in 1 battalion or 2 battalions and tried it out. I don't think it's a good idea.
Well, either way, there are many questions after what's happening in Jammu. I take the point that all of you, or at least 3 of you, have made that Jammu and Kashmir is perennially going to be on the boil. Sometimes it will simmer, sometimes the heat will go up, sometimes you'll be able to put out the fire, and sometimes you'll be struggling to douse it. That is the price we pay, and our soldiers pay as long as we have Pakistan as a neighbor conducting a proxy war. That said, there are many things to fix in our own backyard, from Agniveer to assembly elections in Jammu and Kashmir, and there's no reason to not look at those questions. Thank you, General Bali, General Bhatia, Yashovardhan Azad, and Tavleen Singh, and to our audience, thank you. See you tomorrow.
It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.